Good afternoon. This is the Board of Mayor and Alderman work session for Tuesday, June the 9th, 2026. We're going to call the roll. Alderman Barnhill.
Here.
Alderman Blanton.
Here.
Alderman Caesar.
Here.
Alderman Peterson.
Here.
Alderman Berger.
Present.
Alderman Brown.
Present.
Alderman Potts.
Present.
Vice Mayor Baggett.
Present.
And the mayor's here also. We next go to citizen comments for items that are not on this agenda, and I have none. We'll keep moving along. We're going to go to item one, which is Franklin on the 4th, and also we're going to go to item 2, Bluegrass along the Harpeth. These are existing events. Any questions about those? Seeing none, we'll continue to move on. Thank you, Monique.
Thank you.
Always good to see you. And we'll go to item 3 and 4. We're going to kind of couple those. One is a rejection of all bids perceived for procurement for solicitation 2026-028 for stop loss insurance for group health. And we're going to couple that with Amendment 5 to contract 2023-0126 with Blue Cross Blue Shield of Tennessee in a total amount of $928,463 for stop loss coverage. Christine. Or Eric.
This is pretty straightforward. We have an existing arrangement. We did go out for bid. The only bidder was our existing vendor for this, and it appears to be a better approach for us to amend the existing agreement and then likely go back out in the next year when we do our general administration for our overall health insurance program to maybe couple those together. So an amendment seems like the best approach to the existing arrangement as opposed to going through the procurement process. So we need to reject bids so that we can do the amendment of what we've got. Christine, anything else to add to that?
You did a great job, Eric.
Thank you. I've been well trained.
Go to item number 5, and Christine, stay right. I think you're going to stay right there on this one.
Well, I believe
No,
Michelle's coming.
Michelle's
for
got
this.
this. It's a water. Again,
Michelle,
a pretty straightforward one that we
Procurement
do.
award to ADS LLC, the total amount of $426,812 for years 1 through 3 of wastewater flow monitoring services for the wastewater general division of the Water Management Department.
This is just the typical flow monitors that we have in the collection system that allows us to, in real time, view the flow that we have, the sewage flow that we have. This also helps us to determine what the, developer agreements that we need to have for upsizing of the collection system downstream. So these monitors work in conjunction with our capacity tool that we use to look at availability agreements. They also help us to determine infiltration and inflow sections of our system that have higher infiltration amounts that kind of result in prioritization of capital projects. So this is an amount, it's 426, but it's that amount for 1, 2, and 3 years. This year we do wet weather monitoring, so we have 19 permanent monitors, then we add in probably about 20 more temporary monitors that allow us to look at that infiltration amount, wet weather versus dry weather flow.
Any questions? Okay.
Mayor, I just have one question. Wet weather. It seems like there's been a little bit later rainfall this year. Are we seeing that on your side as well? And
It
is
is,
there anything
yeah.
that we're having to do other than maybe put these wet weather monitors out later?
Yeah, so we've actually are still continuing to pull from the river right now. Usually we start to have to taper off in July or in June, and definitely in July. So our reservoir is full. We're able to continue pulling water and treating at our max capacity. So that's definitely helping us.
Thank you.
Okay, we'll keep moving along. Item number 6 is Resolution 2026-36, resolution approving an revised development plan for Tuckaway PUD subdivision with 2 modification development standards sidewalks for the property located west of Lewisburg Pike, south of Bowman Road, located at 1190 Lewisburg Pike. Established public hearing on July the 14th. Joey.
Yes, thank you. So there is no proposed change to the entitlements for this PUD, so that's why there is not a zoning request or rezoning request with this resolution. They're not building or proposing to build anything additional, no new square footage. This is purely about modification of standards requests for sidewalks within the development. So I'll go over those. For MOS number 2, the applicant is requesting to allow the required pedestrian connection to the front door only and to permit alternate materials such as mulch for the internal sidewalk. That sidewalk construction to be deferred until the installation of the sidewalk along Lewisburg Pike. So we classify sidewalks as paved pedestrian walkways, so mulch or alternative materials would not meet our standards of the sidewalks. Also, we just don't really have a mechanism in place to defer the construction of the sidewalk for such a kind of indeterminate amount of time. So staff is recommending disapproval of MOS number 2. It did go before Planning Commission. They recommended to approve MOS number 2 with the revised language that the sidewalk be concrete and that it parallel the proposed driveway into the development. And it supported the component of the request to defer sidewalk construction until the sidewalk along Lewisburg Pike is installed, which is MOS number 3. So MOS number 3, and just to confirm, MOS number 1 was previously approved. That's why there is no MOS number 1 that I'm going over currently. So MOS number 3 is a request to defer construction of the required sidewalk along Lewisburg Pike until such time that it is widened or for a period of 10 years, whichever occurs first. Again, we don't really have a mechanism in place to monitor that for an indeterminate amount of time. So we are recommending disapproval of MOS number 3. Planning Commission did recommend approval of MOS number 3 with the added condition that the applicant enter into a development agreement with the city, which could help, establish some sort of timeline with that, and then that would help with the timing of the MOS number 2 for the internal sidewalk connection. So staff is recommending disapproval of the entire development plan revision. Planning Commission recommended approval with the added conditions for that MOS language. So happy to answer any questions.
We do have I do have public comment from, I guess, the applicant, Mr. Gamble.
Hello, my name is Greg Gamble, and I'm representing Fellowship Bible Church. I'm here tonight with Bill Wellens as well from the church, if you have questions specifically for him. I did hand out an 11 by 17 earlier that gives you a little bit of context on these two modification of standards. As you all know, with churches, every dollar that's used in development or construction comes from someone in the congregation, is a donation, a sacrifice that is made. And as the church is focused on building this building in this location, they're requesting that some of the infrastructure be delayed a little bit down the road. One of their concerns really fell, which is kind of clearly and obvious to see, but it's on the second page there, modification of standards number 3. In this request, they're asking that the sidewalk along Lewisburg Pike that's required to be constructed with any site plan be delayed until Lewisburg Pike is under construction, or 10 years, whichever one comes first. So give them some time to pull some money together for that sidewalk, but they also didn't want to construct a sidewalk at risk of it just being torn out when the state comes in to do their road improvements. So that's kind of the logic behind that. What the Planning Commission has recommended is that the church enter into a development agreement with the city that outlines this performance specifically, so that both the city of Franklin and the church understand what their expectations of performance are. So that's what that development agreement is about. There's a code requirement that says that a sidewalk connection must be made from each building main entrance to the nearest street. And they do plan on constructing a sidewalk. The request was originally that it be constructed with mulch in lieu of concrete to keep a more naturalistic and garden feel and look about the campus. Planning Commission said that they would prefer it be in concrete, and instead of it following the path of the yellow arrow that you're seeing here on the map, which is across their field, Planning Commission recommended that it follow alongside the new driveway that's going to be constructed from the church. Happy to answer any questions that you may have if you have any.
All of a sudden, all the hands pop up.
Yeah, Tim?
Go ahead, Vice Mayor, and then I'll just go down the line.
There was the connection to the north that was in the joint conceptual that was pulled.
The church has a 4-phase plan, and that was put into the 4th phase.
Got it.
And that's outlined in the development plan sheets. It shows a phasing map on how that's going to be constructed.
All right, that's all I have.
Alderman Berger.
How do you construct a sidewalk with mulch that people can actually walk on? So where's the sidewalk going to go to? This is the path. Isn't that number 2?
It was intended to be a mulch path that follows the gold arrow here. Planning Commission's recommendation was that it be concrete and follow the drive.
All right. I just didn't get why you were asking for mulch, why they didn't sound reasonable.
Just so that it was more of a natural feel, natural material, a garden feel. The field out front. Now, the church is putting their whole facility behind the existing tree line that's out there today. They didn't have to do that. They could have pulled their buildings up much closer to Lewisburg Pike, but they elected to leave that open field for community activities, for Frisbee, for gatherings, and so having the mulch trail was a part of would resemble more of like a hiking trail than it would a sidewalk.
In other words, it wouldn't be going to the parking lot or any walkway that you would need to push a stroller, or you're walking with
That's correct.
shoes
All
on.
the ADA handicapped parking spaces and those spaces are in the back.
And you wouldn't be using the sidewalk for other reasons to
Only
get.
to get from a building to Lewisburg Pike.
Alderman Brown.
I don't have an issue with delaying, doing a development agreement to delay that. I think that makes sense for a church. But I do think that sidewalk needs to be a solid state. I don't think a mulch makes any sense, especially here in Franklin. Whether that's an asphalt or a concrete, I probably don't care much there. If it was a secondary walkway, I might be through a garden or grass or a field, I might be okay with a gravel. But if this is the primary from the street, I feel like it needs to be a solid state walkway.
They'll likely have multiple trails that they'll be maintaining around the property in addition to just sidewalks.
And those would be okay if they weren't paved. But I think the main one coming off the sidewalk, hard to tell what's going to be around there. I think people will be entering this property from homes and wherever else. And someday somebody's going to say, boy, I wish we would have poured a sidewalk going to that church. So, yeah.
Alderman Potts.
Thank you. I may have to have you go back. I was making a couple of notes here regarding a sidewalk, but first thing I wanted to do is on the image that is closest to the left-hand side, you've got county residents right here on the end, and I just want to remind the church and the construction team to please do their due diligence, make sure that people are operating within the appropriate times, and also be aware for noise and everything like that. I still get some telephone calls and emails from those residents, and I want to make sure that their voice is heard. As Alderman Berger Brown just mentioned, when you talk about the mulch pathway, I immediately thought about the ADA opportunity here. And doing mulch, I know about the connectivity on campus, but I'm a little concerned about making it mulch, and then those church members that do require walkers or wheelchairs, et cetera, may have difficulty navigating the sidewalk.
The slope of this entrance drive coming in is between 7 and 8% slope. To have ADA accessibility, you're either going to be providing ramps or have to have a walk that's less than 5% slope. So our ADA accessibility is not coming from the drive, nor will it come from this sidewalk. The ADA accessibility comes from the ADA parking spaces that were outlined in the parking lot.
Yeah, the ones I was thinking about was actually the gold path, if this was the mulch that you were talking about there. Okay. Yeah, and I'm okay with the pushing it out 10 years and creating some type of partnership for that.
Alderman Barnhill.
You know, I wonder sometimes why we have planning staff, and planning staff says no recommendation for approval of modification of standards, either one of those two. And there's no real reason to modify those standards. You need the sidewalks there. We have no guarantee as to when the 10 years or 5 years or 15 years that they'll widen the Lewisburg Highway. And I'm not going to support the modification of standards. I think the sidewalk needs to be there. And I think what happens on something like this right here is, let's just say, for instance, the property to the north of this. Now, I know that, I guess the gentleman there has said, I'm not gonna do this and do that. And I don't know that for a fact. But if you were to develop that to the north of there, you would require a sidewalk from him, but you don't require it from the church. I can look at this right here and not put a church name or distinction there and understand that it's part of our ordinance, it's part of our codes, it's part of the way we set things up. And you've got, it's interesting. You've got a discussion of Carruthers sidewalk coming up on 12, which has nothing to do with this right here, but item 12. And we're looking at a sidewalk there. We're looking at putting these in because what happens is when you put them in, they're there. And it's easier for somebody to leave one out or come back in and not want to put one in if you've already left a gap out of that. And 10 years, I mean, that's, I don't even know what, I can't imagine what Lewisburg or what we would expect or how we would enforce or get anyone to do that. You probably would come back, more than likely, the state would probably widen, if they widen that road, the sidewalk project probably would be incorporated into that. But you'll have 10 years of use and you'll have 10 years of connectivity to that, to any property in the north. You won't have it to the south, that's a county, but you've got that other. And it can go over to Sullivan Farms. It's not that, go over to Sullivan Farms if you wanted to connect to that. That's the reason we're looking at the connectivity on the sidewalks. I don't support the proposed, and I certainly don't support mulch. I mean, you can't, half the congregation couldn't walk on mulch if they're 60 years old or older. I couldn't walk on mulch and get in. Well, I maybe start early to get into the prayer session or something other, but I'd have to start quite early to get in, and then might have to stop and have a prayer on the way in to help me get to the inside of the church again. But
Would you mind if I made a brief comment?
Yeah.
The first building on the church campus sits back here where my fingers are. This is the existing house that is there today. They're going to use that existing house for church offices. Without the other buildings that are shown in front of the first building that they're building, the church is being required to construct a sidewalk all the way back to that building. It's about 1,500 feet. And there's, because there are no additional sidewalks out on Lewisburg, there's not a pedestrian destination today. They're willing to be good neighbors. They want to put in the infrastructure. It's just about the timing of when they do that.
Okay.
And if I could just add, we will build it when the timing's right, just so you know, we're gonna build it. This is not, again, like trying to get out of something
I'm not
against
saying
something.
you're trying to get out of it.
No, I understand that. I'm just telling you, I just want you to know with confidence that we'll do it. That's the first piece. Second piece is the property to the north is county property. So it's county on both sides. And all we're saying is that if we build a sidewalk now on Lewisburg Pike, it's gonna get torn up. Nobody's gonna cross Lewisburg Pike right now because there's nowhere to walk on Lewisburg Pike to come all the way up the hill and all the way back to the property on a sidewalk. So we're just saying, let's do it later. And the other piece that I'd say is we're spending $7 million on site work. We're providing our own sewer from down at Hempec, providing our own water. We're putting a tank in for our own water. We don't have access or enough pressure or capacity for water. We're spending a ton of money. We've been here since '98 in the city of Franklin and asking for deferral of a couple of small things. So the context matters here. It's not just the request to try to move away from something or potentially not do it. I just want everybody to hear that.
Pastor, if you'd give your name just for the record.
Yeah, I'd be glad to. Bill Wellens with
Yeah,
Fellowship
thank you,
Bible Church.
Pastor. Anybody else? Well, whenever I come to visit your church, I'm not going to park on Lewisburg Pike and walk up the sidewalk, to be quite honest with you.
Me
And,
either.
I understand it's our ordinances and all that. I'm fine with delaying the Lewisburg sidewalk if it's in a development agreement with the city. So I'm not much on mulch because I think that's not going to help people get up
Yeah.
there. So
this actually would be our preference as well, once coming back to it, so that's good.
And it probably is good that it's next to the road that you're building
That's right.
rather than somewhere else. Alderman Caesar.
I think Alderman Peterson, did you
No,
want
I was just going to say, talking about having one along the road that's going up there would be the only thing I could think would work.
Right. Well, go ahead, Alderman Caesar.
I was going to say, in agreement with Alderman Peterson, I think if you're going to put up some sidewalk, it's the blue dotted line. Mayor, I hope that I'm wrong in this, but maybe somebody from St. George's Way wants to cross and walk in, and we don't really give them away other than walking up the driveway. Now, maybe that's one person. Maybe I hope it's thousands, but they certainly won't. They'll be less likely to do it if they're trying to dodge cars on the way in. And as we think about walking and building a community where walkability is important, I don't know when this sidewalk gets built, if ever. And so we essentially are cutting off the main building from the sidewalk that's along Lewisburg. Or are you also asking in MOS number 3 to include the dotted blue line in your 10-year deferral project?
Yeah, if you read that last sentence there, sorry, I'll come to the microphone. If you read that last sentence in the Planning Commission's recommendation, it says their motion supported the component of the MOS request to defer the sidewalk construction until sidewalk along Lewisburg Pike is installed. So they would be tied together and they would both be in that development agreement that comes to BOMA.
The blue and the one on Lewisburg?
That's right.
I don't often disagree with Alderman Barnhill, and I think that staff puts forward their recommendation, but we are an elected body to help provide a little bit of a human component to it. I do worry about the property to the north coming in and asking for the exact same thing, and then the property to the north and the property to the north, and the folks in Sullivan Farms don't have a sidewalk because everybody's deferred until Lewisburg Pike, and we don't have a clear timeline on when Lewisburg Pike comes. So I worry about it. I worry about walkability. I worry about making exceptions and not connecting city and new county properties to become city. But I will likely support this project or this deferral, assuming that staff feels confident. And I know in their report, Joey, you said you don't really have a mechanism. How can we be confident that in 10 years, and we hope that all of us are here in 10 years, but if the church changes hands, will this stick with the property, or is it something that we'll get lost in the process and we come back in year 14 and wonder where that sidewalk went?
Yeah, we've been told by staff that that development agreement will create that predictability.
Staff?
Should, yes.
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 Is there any particular language or structure that we need to put into this requirement? Because what I don't want to see is I don't want us to see, now we got to find funding for this sidewalk because perhaps the state decides to put the sidewalk on the other side of the road. I don't want to see us missing out a connectivity opportunity, especially on what will likely be a 4 or 5 lane road at some point in the future, because we haven't done our due diligence today.
Yeah, and our engineering department will definitely work with the applicant should Board Mayor and Alderman approve the amendment to that MOS to establish a development agreement. That language can be worked into the agreement itself to where both parties are content.
Okay. Thank you.
Alderman Bland.
I figured I should say something. So that was the last man standing. I'm sitting here driving this road in my mind, and if memory serves, as you go south on Lewisburg, it gets really tricky right past this property line. It's not a very, like you said, it's not a very pedestrian-friendly area anyway. So having a sidewalk there to me would only add to the fear of somebody actually getting hurt. So I understand your analogy of St. George's Way, but let's be honest, people are used to getting in their car, even if it's across the street. But I support the Planning Commission's modifications to the modifications of standards.
Thank you. Ready to keep moving? Item 7 is a presentation on TDOT State Route 6 East Main Street Bridge replacement over the Harpeth River.
So-
And, Mr. Holmes is going to come up, and he's got a couple of guests with him that I'll let him introduce.
All right, good evening. With me today is Aaron Ziegler and John Story with the Tennessee Department of Transportation. Here to talk to you about the SR6 bridge replacement over the Harpeth River. And I want to thank them for going above and beyond and working with city staff and being willing to come give you an update prior to construction starting. So with that said, I'm going to turn it over to Aaron.
Hi, good evening. Thank you so much for allowing us to be here. Our goal tonight and for this moving forward is to make sure everyone is well informed about the work that's going to happen. I'm the Region 3 Communications Officer for TDOT. John Story is our Region 3 Director of Project Management. He's going to go over the purpose and need and a little bit of the timeline associated with the project, and I'll then jump in to talk about our outreach.
Good evening. Like Aaron said, thanks for having us. Always happy to come and discuss some projects that we have. So we are here to talk about the State Route 6 East Main Street Bridge replacement over the Harpeth River. This is a bridge that I did not realize before we started that is approaching its 100th year birthday. That is really something else. We expect 50 to 70 years out of a bridge. So it was built well, but it is time for a replacement. So we do inspect all of our bridges every 2 years. This bridge has a poor rating. While it is stable and secure, it is just time for replacement, so we don't have to load limit it more. The existing deck and geometry do not meet current design specifications, which I think we all understand. When cars 100 years ago were built a little bit different and operate a little differently than they do now. So that's what that means as far as not meeting current design specifications. We do have it currently load limited to 28 tons. For reference, a standard school bus is 12 to 18 tons. Often we get asked, because quite frankly, bridge construction is painful to the local community. It creates traffic issues and congestion. But the last thing you want is for that load limiting to get down where emergency vehicles and school buses can't travel over it. So we're in good shape right now, but it's the reason it's time to get this replacement done now. There are going to be several benefits to the city and the residents with this bridge replacement. So currently it's a 6-span concrete bridge. We're going to replace it with a 4-span bridge. So what that means is the opening for the Harpeth River is going to be wider and larger, and that's going to allow more water to flow through it. That is going to reduce the floodplain impacts. So upstream residences, there will be some benefit to that for the residents in the current floodplain. The existing 12-foot travel lanes with 6-foot shoulders will be replaced with 11-foot travel lanes. 11-foot is still plenty wide to safely travel, especially at downtown Franklin speeds. In fact, it might help mitigate some traffic and, get cars moving a little bit slower through there while still being adequate. And then with that, we are going to add 3.5-foot bike lanes, and there'll be 6.5-foot sidewalks on each side, and there will be a safety rail between the sidewalks and the travel lanes. So again, all good benefits to the community. Not on the slide, the city of Franklin has partnered with us and have contributed. It's going to be an aesthetic bridge, so we know we don't want an interstate looking bridge in beautiful downtown Franklin. So it's going to have decorative rail. It's going to fit the context of downtown Franklin, and decorative lighting as well, pedestrian scale lighting that's going to fit the context of downtown Franklin. And then I discussed the hydraulic enhancements, which is the improved water flow under the bridge. So it is funded. Bridges are often in our 3-year bridge program. This one actually is in our 10-year plan, and that's because it is funded with the State Transportation Modernization Act funds. So big thank you to the General Assembly for passage of that act. Those additional state funds are what are allowing us to get this bridge reconstructed. It's in our June 26th letting, so it's coming up. Then there usually is a few months of mobilization and get contractors started. So we would anticipate the community would start seeing movement out there around August or September as far as, seeing people getting started, the contractor. And since this slide was created, we've advertised the project, and we've actually put a completion date by July 31st, 2028, so a little bit earlier than this December 28. We have held some meetings already with elected leadership. We do have more that Aaron will talk about coming, where we're going to have outreach to nearby impacted businesses directly adjacent to the bridges. That'll be in this month. And then we'll have a press release in the fall that'll have more information on the upgrades that we just talked about and benefits to the community, as well as ways to contact TDOT and get in touch with us if they have any questions. All right, so the next few slides are about phases and traffic impacts. This is a very challenging area. I mean, we're in downtown Franklin, we've got the bridge, local roads. We are very happy to report that we can keep one lane open in each direction. So that'll help. There shouldn't be too big of an impact to traffic with that. We also, the Harpeth River is a very popular kayaking. I live in Bellevue, I kayak it all the time. So we will have to have some closures of the Harpeth River as we get this bridge taken down and reconstructed, but we will not do that on the weekends. And there will be 2 weeks' notice prior to any river closure. And in our design plans, for those that are really interested, there is actually like we would have a detour plan for roadway, we've got that for water travel as well. We'll have signs at I guess upstream put-ins to give people fair warning if there's going to be a closure of the river downstream. We'll also be in contact with the city as far as any festivals. Of course, we know pilgrimage is often handled. There won't be any construction during pilgrimage, probably be opened up so that pedestrians can take full advantage of the bridge, at that point when the next pilgrimage festival is. And we've been in touch with Franklin Transit Authority. There was concerns. We do have a commercial vehicle restriction during bridge construction, but that is due to vehicle sizes navigating the lane shifts, not due to any load limits. And the transit shuttles will be fine, and their size should be able to navigate it well. Any full-size school bus or larger, it'd probably be recommended that maybe a driver test it with an empty load before a truckload of kids on there, make sure that they're comfortable, but the weight of the buses wouldn't be an issue, and the transit size, or the shuttle-size buses will be fine. So we will have 10-foot lanes during construction, so a little bit narrower, leading to that, where someone might want to test with a larger vehicle. If we do have temporary short-term flagging operations, those will be during off-peak hours, not during rush hour. And that would be with those occasional temporary full bridge closures. But again, as far as just general standard operations, one lane open in each direction. This diagram just demonstrates the shifts that'll go on. Of course, we'll be going from one side of the bridge to the other as we go. Unfortunately, there will not be room for a sidewalk during construction, so that'll have to be closed down while the bridge is under construction. And then the final shift is purely just for some final updates as it's finished up. So the timeline is on the screen. I believe Aaron's going to talk more to the slide. I will say there is a correction. That bid letting is actually June 26th, not the 23rd. That's when we'll know which contractor has got the apparent low bid on it.
Right, so this is part of our outreach plan. We are working on finalizing a date for an informational meeting for the public. We're hoping June 24th. We're working with Paul on that. But we want to make sure that the businesses are aware. I know that a lot of our staff, especially our right-of-way staff, have already talked to a lot of businesses in the area about how this will impact them, but we're going to open it up to the entire community so everyone is aware of what's going on. We will have that informational meeting in June. We've already talked to Battleground Academy, as this is very close to the lower school. I'll also be doing personal outreach to the Catholic Church, the factory, these restaurants and small businesses, because we want them to know about this project and come to this meeting so they can have any questions they have answered. We will have media advisories for any traffic phase changes. So as John went over, we'll be shifting traffic to one side of the bridge and then the other side through these phases. So the media will have that information before it happens, of course. We'll also have outreach on our social media channels as well. And then, of course, we'll be coordinating with Paul and Melissa and the City of Franklin to make sure that any extra communication is handled. Looking at the timeline there, you'll see that the traffic phase 1, when it shifts to the first side, we're hoping that'll be around August, September. The next phase will be about a year after that. And then that final phase as we wrap up the project. And again, this timeline says Q4 of 2028. We're looking more like Q3 of 2028. These are just some contacts handy for you. You can always look up our information on the TDOT website. And now I just want to open it up for any kind of questions, because before this public informational meeting, we want to hear from you so we can address these at these informational meetings as well.
Okay, Alderman Brown.
Well, first of all, you thanked us for having you here, but quite frankly, thank you for being here, because this is a big project. We appreciate it. I had two big things. One is, I understand we can't have the sidewalk, but it is amazing how much pedestrian traffic is there since we opened up Franklin Road. And parking and traffic is going to continue that. They're going to walk on the road. They're going to walk on that road over that bridge. There's no question. And we're not going to be able to stop that from happening. And so I don't know how we're going to look. I'm looking at Chief back there. I don't know how we're going to monitor that, control that, but there's just no way. Those neighborhoods down there, from the factory to downtown to the factory. I mean, we can certainly look at how we do a transit quick shuttle back and forth, but I really believe that they're just going to walk on that road. And so I don't know what I'm asking for, because I realize you probably have looked at it 6 ways to Sunday, but I think we need to be facing the reality. They're going to have pedestrians walking on that roadway for sure. And then the second question really is around the truck traffic, and this may be more for staff too. We continue to see semis coming through our downtown. They're making that right turn on First Avenue. They're taking that curb all the time. There's just way too much truck traffic coming through our downtown. Is there a way to work with those mapping apps? Is there a way to put better signage up? We just don't need the truck traffic coming through downtown anyway. Certainly don't need it when we're going through this construction phase. I feel like we need to do a better job of curbing that, getting it off of our downtown streets for sure. It needs to not even be coming into off of MacAtcher. They need to find a different route altogether.
I can speak a little bit to the sidewalks, and yes, we knew that was going to be a big pain point.
Yeah.
I can talk to our traffic management center. I know in the past they've been able to, and I don't know how they do it, but some kind of block where commercial motor vehicles are not routed in certain areas. So I can definitely talk to our traffic management center about that. Again, unclear how that all works, but I'll definitely mention it to him. And then also, yes, you mentioned enforcement. Big part of it, but definitely we'll bring that back to our team to see whatever else there is to do.
Great.
Yeah, there's a Google for transit for commercial vehicles. Now, they don't always use it, unfortunately, as y'all know, but yeah, we will have this as not a route for them to utilize. And then I would hope, since we are saying no commercial vehicles and should have it signed that way, that then if enforcement could be out there, that could be a way to ticket and enforce. And as far as the sidewalk, you are correct, sir. I mean, it is, we are hemmed in a historic district, and, we couldn't make the bridge any wider to accommodate more width for sidewalks during construction phase.
Understood.
Vice Mayor?
Are there any temporary, I know this is like a big project, I mean, but there's no
swinging bridge?
Possibly a rope swing.
A rope swing across the harbor.
I don't know if that's.
Zip line?
Add another mode of transportation to T-Dots, Bailey. But anyway,
Ferry.
Yeah, ferry.
Make money at this,
No, I hope, we don't know what we don't know, but I would agree with Alderman Brown that there's going to be a lot of folks that are going to want to still traverse this and complaining about it as they do, but as they, this is a major disruption. So even thinking about other temporary pedestrian bridges, I mean, this gets expensive, but I know there's a way to do it, but like cost and what are our options? I mean, I think the option right now is nothing, but surely there's for sure a way to build a temporary pedestrian bridge, but how much does it cost and what are the hurdles?
We do have the downtown shuttle, the lunch shuttle, so maybe.
Downtown shuttle, we could,
Yeah, temporary bridge, given the constraints, would be very difficult and extremely expensive. Probably
That's
north
good.
of $1 million. I do agree with Mayor Moore that we'll work with Max Baker and the Franklin Transit Authority during big events, or if we know of events, to try to have that shuttle running if we can.
Well, I think you're right. Putting that on a regular, we need to do that.
More frequent.
That's the cheapest way to do this, is have a regular shuttle at expanded hours.
Yeah.
There's same one that's been running, and that's a good way around it. There could be some expense to that we might need to talk to the transit authority about, but at least they could hop on, maybe even putting a new stop.
Yeah, maybe it's not door to door.
It's not door to door like it is now, but there's a stop at Old Liberty Pike, a temporary stop there, so that
you might want to look at modifying it during the non-lunch hour. It's a broader loop, but maybe on these other times, it's just connecting downtown and the factory. It's not going as deep into downtown as it does now. There's some ways to think about that.
I'd say a modified would be fantastic. Thank you all for being here.
Alderman Blanton and then Alderman Peters.
And I don't know when BGA is changing their model of that being the lower campus to preschool, but there's also a lot of parents that walk their children to school who live, believe it or not, I see a lot of morning pedestrians with parents and kids, and especially when they have special events, because there's not a lot of parking on that campus. So they will find parking downtown and then hand walk their children across there. I know y'all are like, yeah, but we just can't do it. But we have created a walkable environment on Franklin Road after we've created Streetscape. And it's hard to untrain those patterns, especially when we don't have a lot of parking that allows for that to happen. And on a positive note, I just want to say how much I appreciate y'all being here tonight. Jonathan Marston is like our TDOT informant alongside Paul. I've been sitting on this board for 15 years, and I can't think of another time where y'all have made the effort to come out and speak to us this soon in the process. So I don't know who made this decision, but I would like to see you on a more consistent basis week, and hopefully we have lots of projects for you to talk about. So thank you for that.
Alderman Peters.
Well, just to hear that there's going to be one lane going each way is extremely important there, extremely important. But I know that it's not going to be easy to get done, but I really do like some potential there to kind of get things going, finally. But as I say, the main thing to me is one lane open going both directions.
Alderman Berger.
Do we have any idea when BGA is planning on moving?
They did not mention that to us. We talked about school start times.
I guess they've got to build the new.
They've not started to build yet? Oh, okay, so I didn't know if they had broken ground yet. Okay, so they'll be there during that project then, okay. And then will there be work occurring on the weekends, on Saturday and Sundays? Or probably not Sunday, but Saturdays?
You know what?
Let me see here. So here's the challenge.
Yeah.
The benefit is that we are here before construction. We actually had a debate, should we come after a contractor selected, because that's when means and methods we would know. So we're taking some guesses at this point.
You're welcome to come back.
Yeah. But let me see here.
That's Harpeth.
Yeah, the Harpeth River, no weekend closures to recreational. I would guess there would be, but I don't know.
Well, and we'll have to remember that this is going to be one lane in each direction at all times. So there might be active work happening, and there might not, but still with those closures.
Yeah.
We will find out for you.
Okay.
And again, once we have a contractor awarded for this project, we will know more about the hours, any kind of other restrictions that are possible. So we'll update that.
Yeah, we have quite a bit of pedestrian traffic on the weekends, especially because of the factory now being very active, and with the streetscape being done, and then events at Harlansdale. Now, when events happen, you won't be doing the work.
Right.
I understand that. So I think we need to work to double check how we're going to operate on the weekends once the contractor is selected. So we'll know more about that.
Absolutely.
Thank you.
Alderman Caesar.
Appreciate that. I would encourage Eric and team as they work on that transit stop to consider relocating it, not closer, maybe even in front of the church, even if it meant the church had to, or the city had to take one of those church parking spaces towards kind of the northernmost entry. Because I expect people will be walking down and then go, oh no, I can't get there, and that's probably right where you want the transit stop. So that's one comment. Thank you for coming here. I feel like I'm watching a celebrity because I think I saw you on the news recently talking about this project. So not only are you coming here, I also want to applaud you being out, kind of communicating this to the greater Franklin and Williamson County community. So thank you for doing a great job there. And then the final piece is around truck and commercial transit. Not only is it happening, it seems, more in the downtown area, it seems that it's happening on other streets that are marked no truck. So this is a plea maybe to our chief of police to say, if there's an opportunity and if the city's police force is the right one to be enforcing truck and commercial transit on non-truck and commercial transit roads, let's do that. Because it seems almost every single morning I see dump trucks loaded driving down streets that probably are not built to handle dump truck traffic, including downtown streets, including streets in the south part of Franklin. It's one of the problems when growth happens in a community. You got to move the dirt and the rock somewhere, and it seems to be going through communities that probably it shouldn't. So please hear me, police. You're not going to get an angry phone call from this alderman saying, please stop ticketing truck drivers and dump truck drivers driving through community roads that they're not supposed to be on.
Alderman Brown.
Will there be a timing incentive on this project like there was on Franklin Road?
No, I don't believe this is what we call a A+B contract. We put the time limit to be finished on this one.
Okay.
Alderman Barnhill.
Just one comment. I did, that the bridge has always been a bottleneck. So anything that we do to that to help that water flow through, I would think there would be some people upstream that would be extremely excited about that right there, because that's that and the one on Columbia on Murfreesboro Road too, but especially the one on Franklin Road have always been a bottleneck. And I guess we've done some cleaning out under there at some point in time, didn't we? Okay.
Yeah.
That's it?
That's it. Oh, yeah, I'm sorry.
Well, we appreciate you coming tonight. It's always good to see John. He's a lot of the alphabet soup meetings.
I feel like we should give you a.
Thank y'all.
And we will get those questions answered for you.
Okay, resolution 2026-43, adopting a revised procurement policy for the city of Franklin. Christine and Wesley Wright. For those of you who know Wesley.
Well, I am very happy to introduce the newest member of our finance department. Wesley Wright joined us as our purchasing manager earlier this year, and we are thrilled to have him with us. Wesley has joined us tonight. This is his first opportunity to speak to we routinely review all of our financial policies, and this is time to look at our purchasing procurement policy. And Wesley's going to walk through just a couple updates that we have, and but I wanted to introduce him to all of you, and we are thrilled to have him join our team.
Thanks, Christine. And it's been a pleasure to be with the City of Franklin these last 2 months, and look forward to getting to know each of you more. So, as Christine mentioned, we occasionally review our procurement policy just to make sure that we're up to date on best practices. And so tonight's changes have to do with our purchasing card program. The city has a very robust purchasing card program. With that, it comes with some benefits and that we can move our procurements through faster and make sure our vendors are paid on time. But we also want to be watchful of any risks that are associated with that. So we have just a couple of things that we're going to implement tonight, or recommendations for addition to the procurement policy that just help mitigate those risks. And that is to make sure that we're getting tax-exempt accounts set up for online purchases by our employees to the maximum extent possible, and they maintain those accounts separate from their personal online shopping accounts. And then also that they're shipping products that they order to facility addresses as opposed to home addresses, things such as that, just to make sure that, you know, the city is receiving the goods that we have ordered. And then finally, just to require, you know, make sure that you check with your supervisor that this is actually a budgeted purchase that you're making before you make an online purchase. So that is a summary of the recommendations that we're making to update our P-card policy at this time.
Any questions? Okay, welcome. Glad to have you.
We're thrilled to have Wesley on board. We stole him from the state of Tennessee, so we're glad of that. And he's jumped in and done a great job getting to know our team and meeting some of the key needs we have. And thank you, Wesley, and welcome.
Thank you.
Yeah, that's right.
Okay, item 9 is Resolution 2026-56, establishing the Armstead Infrastructure Development District, establish a public hearing on June the 23rd, 2026.
So, Mayor and Board, we are in the process now a little more formally in terms of considering an infrastructure development district designation, this specifically for the Armistead project. We did do sort of a dry run a month or so ago in the work session to kind of walk through this, but the policy and the state legislation has now been fully enacted that allow us to move forward. We are considered a host municipality at this point, so we're moving forward with implementing the policy that you all have approved. And just a quick summary reminder of that policy for folks. We had 4 kind of key public benefit pillars, policy pillars that I like to call them. They talked about exceptional design, quality, high quality development as one of those pillars. Attainable housing, infrastructure enhancement and contribution to public safety through that. And then finally redevelopment. So we talked about those being 4 categories of broad public benefit that would justify the application of this district in a future development. So we'd like to take you through that with a staff review. Amy's going to walk through staff review and analysis of this. Michael will touch on the financial impact of the project, the assessment we did. It's really the tool that we've had designed for review of annexation. We've also applied to these projects to help give you a sense of that. And then I'll chime in with our recommendation as we have it. We're in a little bit of an interesting position in that we have the project as submitted, which is essentially what you saw a little over a month ago. We did have some recent dialogue with the applicant, and they are looking at some adjustments that might make it more favorable and might well modify the staff recommendation. So we'll let them speak to that a little more specifically. But we had some good dialogue as recently as this morning about some things that they are exploring, and we'll let them speak to that. But what we'll present tonight is what's in your packet and what was submitted, which is essentially the project and the components that were before you a little over a month ago when we first had a work session discussion as sort of applying the policy. So Amy will take you through this, and we'll give the applicant an opportunity to talk a little more about what they might adjust. I'll touch on the recommendation itself and the components of where we are compared to what has been submitted. And again, there might be some alterations to further consider as this process moves forward. So Amy, take it away.
Yeah, so last month I gave a pretty detailed analysis of the 4 criteria. Since there has been no changes to the notice of intent, I'm just going to summarize what I said last month to save us a little bit of time to get to discussion. So for the first criteria, extraordinary benefits and quality development, staff recommended full credit. I think we all can agree that this is an exceptional design, a unique opportunity for the city, so that one clearly checks the box. The next criteria was attainable housing and housing stability. Looking at the sample commitments that you've put in your policy and how you defined attainable housing, staff could not find a reason to give this any credit. We acknowledge that the project has a variety of housing types, but nothing about the plan or the notice of intent talked to how they were going to secure the attainable housing, that workforce housing, that affordable housing income rate. Deed restrictions, that was another thing in your policy that you were suggesting as a potential commitment. They spoke to nothing about that in the notice or the plan, so staff is recommending no credit for that criteria. The next one was enhancement of infrastructure, public service, safety, and sustainability. Again, staff found that there was not a way to measure this one. We could recommend that this one should not be given full credit, because they don't expand the network of infrastructure in a robust way that goes beyond the borders of their development. But they do have some limited expansion of networks and future networks of infrastructure and public benefit in their development. I can go into that more if you want. as you go through the discussion. And then lastly, redevelopment. This is almost an not applicable criteria because this site is not an existing development to work toward to redevelop. It's primarily a greenfield, so staff is saying no credit for that one either. I'll turn it over to Michael.
Michael may want to touch on the financial analysis that we did. Again, it's unchanged from what you saw before, but touch on what we saw there, and then I'll close it out. And then I'm sure you'll want to hear from the applicant specifically.
Good evening, Mr. Mayor, members of the Board of Mayor and Aldermen. Michael Walters Young, your Chief Budget and Performance Officer. In your packets, as Eric said, is the full and detailed annexation cost analysis calculator for this development. There is one modification from when we ran these numbers prior. As we continue to update this tool, and you'll see this also reflected in another request being made on an annexation at the 7 o'clock meeting, we have added a cost called maintenance of effort for police and fire. It is an understanding of, although we may not necessarily define an officer that we need to add or a company we need to add, it's an attempt to account for some degree of usage of those services. Similar to what we've done in Public Works, which was already built into the calculator for maintenance of sidewalks, water lines, sewer lines, roads, etc. It does not change the overall impact. This still generates recurring and one-time resources for the city of Franklin with this development. So bottom line, it's a little bit lower in terms of the recurring amount, but otherwise it's still well over $1 million a year that we believe this would generate in local fees and taxes.
So to just sort of conclude from our review, and as it stands tonight, and again, there's some qualification there, and I look forward to hearing the applicant talk a little more about this. When we saw really only one of the 4 policy criteria fully met, and the fact that it does also fall short of the target that you put in the policy of a value to lien ratio of 3 to 1, this is penciling out a 2 to 1. Those were the basis for, as it was submitted, for staff to recommend against creating the IDD for this project. Now, I want the applicant to speak to this because they've specifically weighed in on some other opportunities to look at the attainable housing component, and I think maybe even some potential on the infrastructure side. And there may be a path to look at how the value to lien ratio comes into sync as the project is implemented. So I want them to speak to that because it's their project. But given what we have tonight, what was submitted to this point, we would not be able to recommend it from a staff perspective. But there's a little time between when you see this formally and the discussions we had today are encouraging. So I want to give them a chance to speak to that as well.
Hello. Put it in big print. Good evening, Mayor and Alderman. My name is Craig Hoover, Managing Member of Armistead TN LLC and Character Development. We're the owner and developers of the property that will be Armistead. I'm here with Phil Hunt, who is our consultant helping us craft the IDD request. First, I want to thank city staff and the council and the board for the significant work that has gone into developing this IDD policy. We think Armistead has worked collaboratively, like Eric said, as early as this morning, to try and because we understand that this is the first application under this framework, and we wanted to establish expectations for future applicants and help them define the types of projects that Franklin seeks to encourage. So the question before you tonight is whether Armistead satisfies the standards established by the city's adopted policy. And based on the staff report and the information contained in our notice of intent as it lies, we believe it does. But we think there are opportunities to further strengthen the final petition. And that's what I want to talk about. So first, the policy requires a project to demonstrate exceptional design in at least one qualifying category and meaningful contributions in another. And importantly, the policy recognizes that different projects create public benefit in different ways and provide multiple paths for satisfying those objectives. We appreciate the staff's conclusion that Armistead fully satisfies the extraordinary benefit and quality development category. Armistead is Franklin's first agri-hood and among a small number of projects nationally that place a working farm, food production, environmental stewardship, education, hospitality, and community life at the center of the development itself. It preserves and reinvents a 140-year-old century farm, protects historic and agricultural resources, and creates a destination centered around local food, farming, and placemaking. It is not simply a collection of homes and businesses. It is intended to be a lasting community asset, educational resource, and destination for our city. We also believe that Armistead meaningfully advances the policy's objectives related to sustainability, public access, and connectivity. The staff report correctly notes that the open space is required under the conservation subdivision framework. However, the question is not simply how much land is preserved, but how that land is programmed, connected, and made accessible to the public. Armistead preserves more than 98 acres of open space, representing approximately 51% of the entire property, consistent with the conservation subdivision framework established by Envision Franklin. However, while approximately 9.6 acres of formal open space is required, Armistead provides more than 12 acres, approximately 25% more. And more importantly, that formal open space is publicly accessible and connected through an extensive public trail network linking the village, the historic farm, the natural areas, and the community gathering spaces. The city's policy identifies public access, sustainability, and interconnection as important considerations. Armistead will provide more than 2 miles of publicly accessible trails throughout the property. In addition, the historic farm alone contains nearly 8 acres of publicly accessible open space and agricultural programming. Combined with nearly 48 acres of active agriculture, more than 35 acres of preserved natural area, regenerative farming practices, environmental stewardship initiatives, and innovative stormwater management. We believe Armistead clearly advances the policy's goals for public access, sustainability, and interconnection within Franklin's broader and future network. We also believe that Armistead contributes meaningfully to the city's housing objectives. Armistead intentionally incorporates multifamily residences, townhomes, cottages, live-work units, tiny homes, accessory dwelling units, and traditional single-family homes because we believe that housing diversity and housing choice are critical community goals. As land developers, it is difficult to control future home prices or rents, but we can create a framework that supports a broader range of housing opportunities that would otherwise exist on this property. We have also heard the board's interest in workforce housing opportunities. And after conversations with staff today, we're evaluating whether up to 50% of our tiny home entitlements could be targeted towards households earning up to 120% of the area median income. It is our intention to sit down with staff immediately following this work session to establish parameters and determine whether a meaningful workforce housing commitment can be incorporated into the final petition. Finally, I just want to briefly address the requested 2-to-1 value to lien ratio, and then ask Phil to weigh in because he knows the details more than I do. But the city's policy expresses a preference for a more conservative 3-to-1 ratio, and we understand and respect the reasoning. However, Tennessee law expressly permits 2-to-1 ratio, and we believe that determination should ultimately be informed by the bond market and its independent participants whose capital and assets are actually at risk. Importantly, these bonds are secured solely by the benefited property within the district. They are not backed by the city, its taxpayers, or its credit. The risk associated with financing rests with the developer, property owners, and investors, and not with the city of Franklin. We are simply requesting the flexibility afforded under state law so that the market can determine the appropriate level of financing for this project. At its core, this petition is not a request for city funding, city taxes, or city guarantees. It is a financing mechanism that allows public infrastructure to be installed up front when it is needed and paid for over time by the property that directly benefits from those improvements. So based on the policy adopted by this board, we believe that the petition supports full credit for extraordinary benefits and quality development, meaningful credit for sustainability, public access, and connectivity, and a meaningful recognition that Armistead advances the city's goals for housing diversity and housing choice and workforce housing. But we will look forward to advancing that some more. But taken together, we believe those benefits satisfy both the letter and intent of Franklin's IDD policy, and we respectfully ask for your support. But I would like for Phil to talk a little bit about the 2-to-1, 3-to-1 business.
Yeah. Thank you. For the record, my name is Phil Hunt with Raphael Hunt and Associates. We are IDD administrators for 250 districts around the southeast, so that's what we do. I'm not going to sit here and talk about all the different value liens that we've done in districts, but I do think there's a compromise position. We've talked to Betsy Knotts about it a while ago. She's familiar with it in Texas. We've done it several times in Texas. It's a way to issue bonds at 2-to-1, put some of the bond proceeds into a cash reserve and hold it till a 3-to-1 value lien is hit, and then release at that point. And I think that's something worth talking about with you guys going forward. All right. Thank you.
Happy to answer any questions.
Alderman Brown.
Well, thank you. A few things. One is a little bit of what I was afraid of kind of happened, which is, the pillars are meant to be distinctive, not hit all 4 pillars in order to be able to get, and I was nervous that the recommendation that we'd get into this situation where we would get a non-recommendation if we didn't hit all the pillars or didn't hit meaningfully enough of the pillars. In my mind, it was always, man, if you nailed one of the pillars out of the park, let's say somebody walked in here and just invested tens of millions of dollars in infrastructure, or somebody came in here and offered 40%, affordable workforce housing. I wouldn't expect them to come in and spend another millions of dollars in infrastructure, or there would be other give-me's, right? If we were starting with a blank piece of paper, they had never walked in the door, and they walked in with this agri-hood design, with this sustainability, with this mix of housing, I think we would all be excited. We'd be excited as we are now with Armistead, and we would be graciously saying, yeah, absolutely, this is a phenomenal development. You're hitting all kinds of criteria. It'd be phenomenal. But we're looking sort of retroactively and trying to fit it into these slots. In my opinion, you've knocked it out of the park on the first one. You're going to give us a development we don't have here in Franklin. It's phenomenal, and the fact that you're checking boxes and the other criteria, to me, is additive to the fact that you're giving us a development that is going to be a place-making place for Franklin. And so to have to meaningfully answer all 3 pillars or all 4 pillars, redevelopment's off the table, but to have to hit all 3 of those, I don't think that should be the criteria. That's a big ask. That's an expensive ask. You're leaving money on the table just with the agritourism development. I mean, you could do a whole lot more on that land than what you're doing, and you're leaving it on the table. I think the tiny homes, I think the studios, I think all of that mix of housing is going to give us some lower market rate housing that's going to help us, going to give us some missing middle. It's going to help us in that regard. I do think some of the innovative infrastructure you're putting in is going to be sustainable. The trails, the parks, all of that. I think it's all great. So in my mind, I think, again, if we had looked at that IDD first and then you'd walked in the door, I think you would have passed the bar, in my opinion. And I think looking retroactively the same way. Our policy does say not less than 2-to-1. I think where you're headed with the compromise is fair and good, but our policy does allow for it if we wanted to do that. But at the end of the day, I still go back to one of the reasons that we really wanted this policy was for the small local guys. If at the end of the day, we can't have the local guys building on a small family farm here and bringing us a great development, then what we'd end up with is the out-of-town folks coming in with the big dollars, building developments and big multifamily developments and just putting a bunch of homes on places. Your local folks building something great for us here, and the whole idea ought to be, we need to help you be able to do that. And an IDD helps you to do that. Puts infrastructure in place before the development, and that's what we're trying to do with it. And it keeps local people building in our community. And at the end of the day, if it does that, and it's no risk to us, we get a great development at the same time, I think it's well worth it. So, my 2 cents.
Alderman Glenn.
I don't think I could have said it any better and more educated than Matt, but I agree. I think Armistead is something that, for those of us who've been to Serenbe and all these other places, that there's very unique and, to me, sensitive to our community. It's creating a place that's continuing our heritage and building on a new one. And that's something that excites me. I think that it is still new territory for us. I think that we have all the professionals, as do they, at their fingertips that will help guide us through this process. But it was my understanding from day one that it was 1 pillar out of the 4 that you had to achieve. Then it kind of gets, that doesn't mean I'm wrong and y'all, I mean that I'm right. But I think the idea that you're willing to look at some affordability piece is great, but I think that you've already got one in the connectivity and the sustainability from an agri-hood. I mean, my gosh, why doesn't that qualify? I don't get it. I don't want us to make this so difficult because it's new that we miss a really great opportunity. So I can support where your application is already heading without the extra bells and whistles.
Thank you. Vice Mayor.
Well, you're always going to be the guinea pig, and good or bad. So this is one thing I wanted to bring up. The point was that because I do think this is some precedent-setting stuff, which is why I think we should be cautious in what we do. But the path you all took, for those maybe watching or coming back to watch later, because if this gets approved, the process in which Armistead was developed or proposed, the public engagement that happened on this development ahead of time, the public engagement was not required by our process. That was one. I don't know that there was how many homes? 600, 700, 800, whatever, 800?
800 dwellings.
Whatever.
Yeah.
We had one guy in 15 of the meetings or whatever it was that came and spoke in opposition. It was like maybe the very last one. And I think he thought it was something else. But I think that is unheard of. So that to me, the process in which, and there was how many modifications of the standard on this? Probably it was a lot.
Yeah.
It had to do with
7 or 9, something like that. Yeah.
Well, we've seen more since then,
Yeah,
since the
yeah.
signs have come around.
Yeah.
But the pre-sign discussions, this was a really, really big one. And so I think that's important to note as well, that the process in which this came through was different, public engagement. It is something different. There was community support. That is a big deal to me. We had, and now we're looking at this retrospectively, but if we're looking at another one prospectively, prospective one, and the applicant has done the work to get the community on board with the project, and that actually weighs heavily in my favor as well in this too. If the community is in favor of this, if we're hearing a lot of positive feedback or less negative feedback, that's a big deal. And so that's another reason why I'm not something that's on here, but the fact that the community was on board with this when this came through, is a big deal, and y'all took those steps to do it. I do think we have to, looking at this retrospectively, we are able to have some liberties that we're having right now, but I would just encourage the board and those listening is that this is, we mean this policy in future ones. And I think we mean what it says, and we mean we want to see actual affordable, or we mean it can't just be, some fluff, because this is not fluff on the character of the design. I don't think we're able to enforce the farming aspect of this. I don't think there's anything that's a nice thing. Don't get me wrong, the farming is fantastic, but if the farming doesn't work, there's nothing, and we do the IDD, you do the IDD, and then you just decide not to farm, then we've done so we can't base it on the fact that there's farming. It's a nice thing. We got to kind of look past that. And even when I do, I think it's good. I know it's a core value, and if we can't do that, we don't want to do it at all. I get it, but there's also reality and what we can do to enforce. So I like this. I understand why staff reviewed it the way they did, and actually agree with the way that it was analyzed. I think it was a very fair analysis of it. And I think the next one that comes through should be analyzed the exact same way, and we can have these discussions.
Alderman Potts.
Thank you, sir. So, first again, thanks for being first through the gate. This is never going to be an easy process, and as you've heard it being retroactive, reflective, all these different things, it makes it a little bit harder as we come back and say, okay, and can you? And can you take it to the next level? Can you do something else? When you mentioned it, and the piece that kind of still wanes on me a little bit, or not a little bit, but a lot, is the 2-to-1 to 3-to-1 ratio. That right there is at the top of the list. But right below that is what you mentioned. You said that y'all were going to do 50% workforce housing on the tiny homes. Is that correct? And I pulled it up on one of the documents that's on page 1, and it was tiny home lots, 42 units, average value of stabilization. It's like $600,000 per unit. Am I looking
No, townhomes are 42.
Okay, 42.
Yeah, tiny homes, we have 23 of
23
them are entitled for. That's
and
right.
were you going to take those 23 and make 50% of those?
And make 50% of those, AMI, 120% of workforce
Right.
housing, right?
Workforce housing,
That's
so
right.
roughly a dozen
Right.
of those. So roughly for, we'll say 24 individuals there. And I'm just kind of keeping this in perspective because at one point we were talking like, we wanted individuals when it came to attainable, checking the attainable column to be somewhere in that 10% range. And so if memory serves me right here, y'all are estimating to have 1,992 residents, or did I misread that, like couples? Or total individuals?
Yeah, we're entitled for 830 dwellings, right? And but 450 of those are multifamily. So of the for sale or single family product, a dozen is about 5 or 6% of the overall total.
Just want to make sure that we're looking at this because it is it's under your residential area, and I wanted to get some clarity on that. Yeah, that's all I got. Thank you.
Alderman Berger.
I already think there are bells and whistles here. Brandy was interesting when you said that because, yeah, there's a lot of bells and whistles in this already. There's nothing like it. It's a stellar design, and I love that we're local and that we're doing this here, and you're bringing this here to our area where you live. I'm not going to repeat what Matt said and Patrick because I think they hit the nail on the head. Everything that they said, I agree with, and those are the thoughts I've been thinking as well along this presentation. I would ask that we work on the housing issue just a little bit more. I think you can do a little bit better there. I really think you need to go back to the drawing board and work on that housing issue. The tiny homes, I love the fact because that's becoming a very, very desirable element in our community. We have a lot of people that are just one person living in a house, or two people that are downsizing and totally want to. I mean, it's not only a trend. I think it's going to be here to stay for a long time because people are looking for that kind of element, and so I think maybe you could reduce that multifamily a little bit, increase the single family, increase some of the other ones. You've got townhomes, you've got tiny homes, and then you've got the multifamily. I think you need to work on that a little bit. I'd like to see you do a little bit better job on that. Other than that, I think you've brought a stellar design, and I agree with the comments that have been made tonight.
Alderman Barnhill.
Yeah.
You know what, I guess my question would be, as I've said and listened to this, what would we get if we don't have the IDD?
You would get a development that would happen more slowly. You would get half of the town center first, and then we would, and then we'd sell some of it, and then we'd make, then we'd be able to put in a little bit more and all that stuff. And so it's kind of the sort of a traditional way that a bootstrapping developer would go about this process. I think what you would see with the IDD is an immediate impact in infrastructure, and you would see the sort of the full fruits within the first couple of years rather than in the first decade.
And that would be a result of the financing being more readily available at a lower cost to you then, okay?
Essentially, yes, and it would enable us to be able to, well, spread those development costs over it because it's amortized over 30 years, right? And so it takes the debt service is a little bit less onerous. But yes, it would enable us to do the whole development at once without using local financing and local teams, and bring Armistead to fruition in a real way.
Eric, do you mind repeating what staff's recommendation is on this?
Well, based on what was submitted, we were recommending against granting the IDD because we saw only one pillar met and not the significant components in any one of the others. Our expectation was never that they meet 3 or 4. It was just that there was something significant beyond one, and that it fell short of the 3-to-1 that's stated in the policy. Now, I think what you've heard from Greg tonight is that there's a path to address the attainable housing component, and also a path that we might be able to see how the 3-to-1 kind of phases in over a time period. So I think they have given you some things that address the reservations that kept us from a recommendation for it. I would just add, I think one of the possibilities we all were excited about, at least I thought, that the IDD could restore a component of us talking about how to integrate workforce housing into projects. The state essentially stripped us of that with some of the work on inclusionary zoning. We used to, if we enhanced your density, we just asked for a small portion back in attainable units. The state took that away from us. This is a way of using the carrot of an IDD to help encourage at least some commitment to get some units in the workforce range. So that I think is one of the things, and as you look at this policy, I think that's a great place to really encourage something. You don't need to be prescriptive with a percentage or an exact number, but something that can fit the character of what the development's designed to do, but also helps us chip away at getting more units in that workforce. I mean, we heard the housing report just a month ago as well that really highlighted that need and the deficiency that we have. This is a way of using really a carrot to help encourage getting at least some units in the mix. And I appreciate the willingness to look at that and maybe circle back when this is before you for formal consideration to add something in that range.
And I might add that, one of the things that we do towards the workforce housing, like I said before, we have minimal ability as land developers to be able to dictate what rents are, what the rents are, right? However, with the space that we are afforded, and what subsequent vertical developers are going to have, in order to meet to get to the densities that we have, they're going to have some really small units in there, and just by the sheer fact that they're small they're going to be attainable. We can't control that, and right now the city and the state, doesn't really have a mechanism to do, to incentivize, affordable housing, in a rental environment. I will also say that this is a new urbanist project, right? This is one of those like West Haven or Seaside or Serenbe and all these, and one of the central tenets of it is housing diversity, and one of the sort of the core elements of it are accessory dwelling units, because we believe that everybody that works in the community should be able to live there, and so we know that's not something that we can promise this, the city right now that we're going to have X amount of accessory dwelling units because it is private property. But we have created incentives in our CCRs that to incentivize people to put in accessory dwelling units with separate entrances, and so that does create the opportunity for workforces for people that live in the workforce to live in this community. It is a central tenet of what we do. We're trying to come up with ways that from a land development standpoint that we actually can can turn that dial, other than just it's a core value.
Go ahead.
Remind me, what's your unit per acre density?
Total for
Just the development? as
yeah,
a whole?
4.1 to 1 acre, something like that.
I guess, well, I'll encourage you to keep the discussion going on those tiny homes and what you can do there. First one out of the gate, I think it says a lot. I do think, to Eric, to your point, I do think this is the opportunity. I mean, we did talk about that a lot. I think there's a lot of developments that would come in here with some very high density that for sure, that's the number one thing that I think we're going to be talking about. I think this one was a little bit different because density wasn't the real thrust of this development. It really was agri-hub. But I do think there's still an opportunity here. You and I even talked about the tiny homes and what we could do with those tiny homes. So I would encourage you to keep having that conversation. If there's a portion of those tiny homes that can go that way, I think that makes this a fantastic first IDD and creates a real enthusiasm around setting a standard. So I'd encourage you to keep having that conversation and set the bar high and let everybody who follows you know what we're talking about here. So
we will.
Okay.
We will.
I appreciate you.
Yeah.
Well, I'm not quite there yet. I have a lot more questions. My calculations, if you do half of the tiny homes as workforce, I'm getting 1.5%, not 5 or 6%. So I'm not sure how you came up with that. And I think you need to prove to us a little bit more that you're willing to continue to work to refine this to something where we're addressing some of the housing needs in our community. I think 12 units doesn't address it for me. I appreciate your willingness to start talking about that, which before you were pretty resistant to changing or talking about anything. And I think for you to be able to get this on through the process, you're going to have to be a little more flexible than what you've been in the past, and it looks like you started to be a little more flexible.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Okay. Item number 10 is discussion concerning the intersection of South Margin Street and 3rd Avenue South right turn only evaluation.
So last year, we made an adjustment to this traffic pattern. It had come from a work of our engineering and traffic engineering team working with the Downtown Neighborhood Association. So one of the commitments we made at the time when that adjustment was made was that we would come back with some data and review of what we'd done and how it was working. So Paul's going to provide that to you this evening. Glad to share that and have the discussion. So Paul, take it away.
So I'm just going to, Eric did a great job explaining that. I'm just going to jump into some of the data. The right turn compliance seems to remain relatively high at about 97, 98%. The non-compliance, that puts at about 1 to 3% non-compliance. Overall, the traffic volumes have increased since the 2022 study. That could just be additional trips in the area. Could be it's just more efficient, so people are choosing to travel that direction. What we observed with our cameras was around 112 observed violations at this intersection. I will remind you that the signal is phased to allow those violations in a safe manner, meaning that you cannot go straight across 96 while a pedestrian light is on, allowing a pedestrian crossing. So that was done by intention, but overall it seems to be working. We did receive a few complaints throughout the last trial periods last year that we've implemented this. It's not a complaint that we receive often, but we have received some. Wanted to bring it back, get your feedback in any direction that you may have.
I do have a couple public speakers, but if you want to, okay, Rudy Jordan and Kelly Harwood, please come forward. You got 2 minutes.
Hello, and thanks for having me here. My name is Kelly Harwood. I'm the owner of Gallery 202 at 2nd Avenue and Church Street in historic Clouston Hall. So my issue with this right turn only, and I didn't know, am I mistaken, you can go straight through
You're not legally allowed to.
Legally, okay. So my problem with this is, as a business owner, trying to stay afloat in downtown Franklin, and I've been here for 17 years, My problem is that we're deterring traffic away from shopping with me and along with all the other people in the area, even the Harpeth. I mean, you force someone to turn right and they're going to end up making a right turn, and they're also going to think about, well, you know, I do want to go to Main Street, so they're going to pull in someone's driveway to turn around, possibly. They may turn around at Pinkerton Park. I wouldn't want them turned around in my driveway, and I'm sure no one else would. Plus, it's a safety thing. If you have children playing in your driveway, and then you have a large amount of people turning around in your driveway, it's a safety thing. If someone could get hurt. If you want them to go to Pinkerton Park and turn around, that's a problem to me because it's also a safety problem. And then it's just confusion, and you've got a lot of issues of trying to make a left turn, and it's just not safe with that sidewalk also. Where's the next turnaround? You're going to keep going straight. It's just a very confusing thing. So what they're going to do is get aggravated. They're going to continue going straight, which either, if they're a visitor, they're going to hit the interstate and they're going to go back to Huntsville or Murfreesboro. They're going somewhere else. I feel like it's a really big problem not to be able to turn left and go shopping on Main Street, to go to go straight and shop with J.J. Ashley's, the antique malls, PD's, turn left on 2nd Avenue. You can't get to us if you're forced to turn right and leave downtown Franklin shopping area. And I've heard that from customers. It's not just about living downtown and the traffic's heavy, and yes, maybe it does back up to Lewisburg Pike. It also backs up from 3rd Avenue and Church Street. I'm on Church and 2nd. It also backs up there, and you cannot go straight on Church Street because there's no turn lane to go left, and so the car in front of you will sit there, and you go through 2 or 3 traffic lights just to go straight across. So it's not the only issue. There's a lot of other issues with traffic. So if you do this on one place, you should be able to have to do it in the other locations as well. Any questions for me? Okay. Thank you so
Jordan,
much.
Thank you.
I'm Rudy Jordan. Thank you for this opportunity. I'm here to support Kelly and J.J. Ashley's. Lisa Biggers is at market today and couldn't be here. She owns J.J. Ashley's. She said that this has hurt her business tremendously because people cannot go straight across 3rd Avenue when they've come down from Lewisburg or Adams Street or that side of town. 2nd Avenue, where I live, has always been mixed use. So we're used to having commercial and residential on that street. We've always lived in harmony there. I just hate to see downtown, which is so fragile in terms of our historic district. We need to maintain the historic character. We need to have the mix of commercial and residential. And I just want to ask you to please, if you're not going to allow turning left on 3rd Avenue, at least allow the traffic to go straight across. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Board, I saw some hands go up. Alderman Caesar, you're recognized. They were asleep, so go ahead, Alderman Caesar.
My question, and I think you cover it in the staff note, Paul, but it's one thing to say we've got increased traffic at that area, 19% is what you referenced. It's another thing to say that there is lower delays, but do we believe that this adjustment has improved throughput, so lower stacking and lower impact further down Lewisburg?
Yeah, it absolutely has decreased stacking and delay and is moving traffic more efficiently, given that 90% in that initial study was making a right turn anyways.
Thank you.
Alderman Potts.
Thank you, sir. Yeah, Paul, just a quick question. You said that there were 112, what'd you call it?
Observed violations.
Observed violations. When was that time frame? Like, were you seeing most of those at the very beginning, and now everybody has got their lesson learned? and
No,
they don't
this
fit?
was a camera that was put out well after it had been implemented to do the before and after comparison. I want to say that it was, I'd have to go back and look at the report. but it was well after it had been implemented
Okay.
into the winter months.
And how long were those violations? Was that over a 6-month time frame? About?
It's probably in that memo. Sorry, I don't have that. I can take a quick look.
Sorry, I was looking at the bottom of page 2 is what I was looking at.
There would have been no violation, it's not violation, it's just.
I can find that out. I don't know how long the
It's all
cameras
right.
were out
Point being is I was just really kind of hoping to see that most of those were happening in the early cycle of these changes. I would like us to continue to monitor this because as Ms. Jordan mentioned about the fragility of our downtown commerce, that if we are seeing some negative impacts and we have our business owners sharing that information with us, and if going straight through that rather than eliminating the left turn, but going straight through that, if that needs to be revisited, then I think maybe a year from now or so, we could continue to take a look at these numbers.
So I'm looking at this, the data was collected, it was probably a 24-hour count.
Okay.
If we decided we wanted to allow the through movement, the signal is split phased currently, so if we have it split phased, you might as well allow through and left is what we would recommend.
Okay, thank you.
Vice Mayor?
Oh, well, Brandy had her hand up.
I'm sorry, Alderman Bryant.
When this was proposed, however long ago, I guess 2025, by the Downtown Neighborhood Association, I think that's where it originated. You kind of have to understand the people that live in the area know their area, right? I thought it was a little bit odd. But now, after a year of implementation, when you have other neighbors that are seeing an adverse effect on them, you have to take that into consideration too. And try to think about an analogy. And for me, when Lewisburg Pike gets shut down just when they were repairing over there, I don't remember what they were doing, but they were digging a bridge or something. Yeah, I mean, that was a very big discomfort for a lot of people, but more if we're just traversing through downtown. But you also have to think about the Zula and Max that are right there on the railroad. I'm sure it hurt them for a long time. When you build a business or you open a business, you do it based on the traffic flows that are there when you have it. And I think that's probably one, as Dana McClendon would say, the unintended consequences. We didn't think about the commercialness of 2nd Avenue and the other side of South Margin, whether it's J.J. Ashley's or Cuts and Blessings. It's a change in traffic pattern, and I think we've waited a year, and I don't know how you roll back what we've done, but we said we were going to give it a year and then meet, and we've got citizens here that are saying it's a problem. So I don't know how you fix it, but we said we'd give it a year and then we'd reassess, and we're at reassessing, and we have people that are on the opposite side. So I think we need to probably talk about, I don't know. I mean, what do you do from here?
Alderman Caesar. Who did I omit? Vice Mayor. Vice Mayor, then Alderman Berger, then Alderman Caesar.
I was going to follow up on Brandy's comments.
Go ahead then.
And I think that was the root of my question. So are we having substantial stacking that's now been eliminated? And how are we looking at this a little bit more holistically? Because the folks who are here are saying, hey, we're on the other side of the road. Remember us.
Yeah.
And if we're still seeing people wait through 2 or 3 lights, just going from 2 light signals to 2.5, does that justify kind of creating an island across? And I know that we're in the process of doing a parking study and we're looking at downtown traffic study. And so all these things kind of come together, but I think this is an opportunity to hear the people who are coming in and saying it's affected them. I know there's a lot of stuff kind of coming down the pipe, and other aldermen will probably comment on that. But I think that's the root of my question, Paul. Not only are we moving people through, but are we seeing that line of cars that at one time was stretching kind of all the way past O'Moore, or whatever we call that now, and now but we don't need those that cross-hashed intersection at 4th, because there's no queue there.
Yeah, it is definitely substantially better from a traffic queuing perspective. We're not seeing it nearly queue up all the way to Lewisburg, onto Lewisburg as bad. I'll tell you, as we continue to develop, I would expect it to ultimately queue up again. Unfortunately, there's no widening of those streets in the downtown area. but it is definitely moving more traffic and more efficiently. And I think you just have to look at what is your overall goals, that to move traffic, accommodate businesses, what is it that the board is trying to accomplish in that area?
Vice Mayor.
And you could certainly, the Downtown Neighborhood Association did do a great job of trying to reach all the citizens. You never reach everyone, but they did do an awesome job. You could also kick it back to them to try to get more feedback and public engagement, which we'd be happy to work with them on, however you want to handle this.
Go ahead, Vice Mayor.
Well, and we've forgotten to mention that there was 100%, the DF, you required us to get the DFA.
Yes, correct.
To which, and this is another thing. We went through all this on the front end. We don't have any traffic options in downtown on the street. We've got no options. Is this or it's gridlock. I respect everyone who spoke tremendously. And I've talked to other business owners on that section because I got a phone call from Rudy and I started asking around. I do business in that area and didn't hear the same kinds of consternations that I heard from you all. That doesn't mean they're all the same. That doesn't mean it's just one. It could be business up, business down. Is it this? Is it City Hall? You have to also remember that City Hall in this quadrant has absolutely wrecked the pedestrian access from Main Street. I mean, effectively from the square. I think it will pick up as that park is finished. I think it's going to draw people more down to that area. I'm all in favor of going back to the DNA and DFA and getting additional feedback. One thing on the campaign, when I was campaigning this fall, people said, why can't we do more of that? That's amazing what happened on Margin Street. The fact that they're not, I lived on 4th Avenue for a couple of months during some work at my house. It was occasionally on a Saturday you would have, but it wasn't like it was before. The first time I ran in 2021, it was backed up every single day in front of O'Moore, Lewisburg. I've got videos of this free-for-all, and it was all comes back to this bottleneck. So we found something that works. I want to go back to the rest of the business owners, go back to DFA, and we can get more feedback. I'm really hesitant to, 5,000 people, 5,300 people are now easily traversing, taking a right turn there now. And that's a day. With 2% that are making the 100 people going through. That's why there's more traffic flow, because it's flowing. 7% before. So a difference of 200 people a day were going straight. A difference of 50 people were going left. I'm not as concerned about the people going left, and to Kelly's point, which I totally agree with, which is why we talked to DFA, was like, do you all think this is going to deter people from shopping downtown? Well, if you're coming from Lewisburg, coming down Lewisburg, you can if you're wanting to get to the square, you can go right onto Margin, take a left. At that time, you could take a left onto 3rd to get downtown. Or if you're on Lewisburg, you could just keep going straight to Main Street, or go down and take a right on Church, which would be the path of least resistance. There are businesses there on that side, but of Margin, on the other side of Margin, that they aren't. There's, that's there. I want to hear more from them, but I do think that overall, I doubt 2nd Avenue has had less traffic or parking. Have you had less parking problems?
I've had less customers. And I'm hearing it from people that actually are wanting to go straight across and do some shopping, and then they just go home and they go back to Huntsville, like I mentioned.
Yeah.
That's the issue.
Yeah.
If you could say no left turn, that would be good.
All right,
I apologize. I apologize.
We need to go on and finish the board because we've got 2 more items.
It's okay.
I don't think we can throw the baby out with the bathwater on this. I think there's some more dialogue to happen. But thank you.
I have a question, Mr. Mayor. So what happens if we just allow this right-hand turn in straight ahead and not the left-hand turn?
Again,
How does that affect the traffic?
We have to split phase that intersection,
Yeah.
so you can only run one leg at a time. If you're gonna allow the through movement, there's no harm in allowing the left turn. If you're on South Margin traveling northeast.
So it's a wash.
It's a wash. Yeah, we would just allow it because it would have its own phase anyways.
Alderman Brown.
I just
That creates a delay for
make the statement that maybe one of the things we ought to be looking at too is, do we have the adequate signage? I will tell you, as a business that nobody can ever find in downtown, seriously, I will just tell you, I don't know that we have, maybe we need better signage that say galleries this direction or shopping this way. I mean, seriously, people cannot find my business. So I would argue that maybe we just take a good hard look at downtown signage, and do we have the right kind of signage in the right places, pointing to the right places?
And I can tell you, we worked with our traffic operations group to put the direction into Waze and to Google and to try to get that all corrected. It's difficult, but we've tried on this one.
Maybe some physical signing too.
Yes, agreed.
Alderman Potts, were you going to speak?
Good news, Alderman Brown said what I was going to say.
Perfect. Okay, to be continued.
So we'll do some additional engagement on feedback with both Downtown Neighbors Association and DFA, and circle back. It's a trade-off of efficiency versus some other access questions. This has made it work more efficiently, but that's not the only goal. We get that. So we'll bring that back for further direction after we've gotten a little more input and help you have maybe a more complete picture of what people are thinking.
Okay, we're going to go to 11, which is new City Hall redevelopment park funding.
So when we presented about a month ago on the update of the City Hall project and our guaranteed maximum price and et cetera, I did make a mention of some of the work we were doing around providing for some ways to connect folks to the 1 acre park and some of the amenities there, similar to what we've done with other park elements, other places. And so we wanted to walk through sort of this approach in terms of commemorative opportunities there and how we would work with that. And again, it's stuff we've done with park benches other places. It's similar to the model we're doing with LEG's Dream World in some ways. So we're trying to expand that and have that be a great way for folks to connect to what I think is going to be a wonderful addition to downtown, the 1 acre park. So Lisa and Tori are here to walk you through that and answer any questions. So take it away.
Sure. Thank you, Eric. So good evening. Really, we have a program with Friends of Franklin Parks with our executive director, Tori Barnhill, that's with us tonight, is with benches or swings or that type thing, depending on where the location or the cost of it for a bench, because not every bench is equal across the park system. Then we have an area to where you can donate, and we go through Friends, but the park system inserts the bench in and maintains it for a certain amount of years, and then that comes out. As far as what we're talking about with City Hall, we believe that can work the same way. We already have an existing program. Maybe we should do that the same way. As far as the fountain's concern, is one of the things that Tori had brought forth as a great idea, and you hear somebody, it's really about, as you saw with the beam ceremony last week, people love to engage. And so it's not about the amount of money or who can give the most. It's really about the engagement of the community if you want to be a part of this City Hall park. And so the fountain allows for that, to where it really becomes being a friend of the park. So no matter the amount, it's not about putting all the names or businesses on the fountain. It's about just being part of something and giving back to the community, and that money would go directly back into that park. It's specifically for the fountain if we decided to do it that way. So you would be a friend of the City Hall Park, and so that's where those funds would go into. And that just allows, even though we're building the park, we're doing this kind of the same way we're doing with LEG's the inclusive playground at the Pearl, is even though we know that people want to be part of something and they feel like they have a little bit more of an impact on the community, when they can give to something, they see it, and then there can be the ceremony and that type of thing. So more of a friends type of fountain versus individualized, because I think that's I don't believe that's the intent that we want at City Hall Park, is that we have a business, So it's really about if you had a child, if you have an adult, you have a family, or it might be a business, but it will be a friend of the City Hall Park. So that's the way we're kind of looking to set that up, if that would be.
Alderman.
I hear what you're saying, where people aren't always looking for name recognition, but some of them are.
Yeah.
And I think that a hybrid of what you're talking about, and I kind of did this with what I did with the carousel. I think there's a way for people's names to live maybe on our website.
Absolutely.
Friends of that help donate to the fountain, so that they're not totally erased from any kind of recognition. And maybe when you do unveil the park, there is a place for a sign, doesn't have to be a permanent sign, a sign that shows all of the people that did, and you have a level. You don't want to negate the child who empties their piggy bank, but how do you have a level that is enough that it really moves the needle, that is recognized in a place the day you unveil it, as well as somewhere in the information about the park. Click here to see who sponsored. I don't know. I think there are some people who do want to kind of hang their hat on something. In my experience as fundraising for the last 10 years, I wish it were the opposite. That's not how that works, even if it's a municipality. And if you think about LEG Stream World, there are opportunities to have names on pieces of equipment and different things. I don't know, our goal here, and I feel like I'm getting out of city alderman and into fundraising, and Tori, you do a great job. So I just think that there might be a hybrid approach that gives opportunity for people who do want to have a larger investment and get a little bit of glory for it. Love ya.
Tori Barnhill, Friends of Franklin Parks. Thank you for the opportunity to be part of the discussion. And I wasn't here for the original, but we've had conversations, and I've had some conversations with you. And I think it's very appropriate, very similar to LEG's Dream World. There was a committee that visioned the space and how everybody wants to be part of it, but do you really want to name everything, and then it's all about the name and not about the park and the feel? And I think City Hall is very comparable to this. You want it to be open and welcoming, and that's how the fountain kind of came up in discussion. Like, maybe Friends would fundraise for this specifically, and there weren't a lot of names and a lot of plaques. It was, everybody should be a friend of this park, and if you want to give, great. If not, we'll sell beer at 4th of July and we'll cover the expense or something of that nature. I kid, please don't judge me on that answer. But we would be happy to engage in that conversation, because it would be a lovely amenity. And to your point, there's lots of ways to put it on websites if somebody wanted to have a larger amount. But we want everybody to be a friend of it. And if it's because you want to give this large amount of money, that's up to the city if there was something that was appropriate. I mean, in the benches, we kind of are near a pass-through that allows a tax write-off for the people that are interested in that as well. People have different reasons for giving, but there's a way to address it where it doesn't clutter it or take away from what you're trying to accomplish next to this beautiful new building coming in a park downtown. Those are my thoughts.
Alderman Brown.
A little bit of a reinforcement, but I think this park will be treated a little different. There's a lot of businesses that invest in our city. Because this is attached to our city hall, I can imagine that the list will be long of people who would want to put their name on this park from a business perspective, as you're saying. And what I thought was really interesting, well, really pretty awesome about this weekend on that beam, I couldn't believe how many people showed up to sign that beam. And a lot of those were those businesses, but they signed them as individuals, even if they wrote their business underneath that. And I think that would be the spirit that I would say that this park should have, is it should feel personal. And even if their business is somewhat represented, it's the people in those businesses that are contributing to our community, that are part of this community. I think that's got to be the feeling of it. This is our city hall, this is our community, and I don't think it's not for sale. And so that's where I think the heart of it is.
Vice Mayor? I'm sorry, I got Alderman Berger, then the Vice Mayor.
All right, I'll be quick. So we look at Franklin Theater. They have, when you walk in, you see names, and then on the side, names of the people for the seat. Williamson County Animal Shelter have that. People who want to honor their family members. Sometimes that's really important to them. We have the polo field at Harlansdale and the bricks, the pavers. We have the pavers at 5 Points. We have names all over because people really want to honor their family members. They want to honor somebody who went before them, maybe a city leader, maybe someone who was very near and dear to them in the community. So I think we have to find a way to do this, but not clutter the park. But at the same time, I'm thinking, how about the back end? Instead of putting it all over the park, how about the back end of the building, that side building, of the wall of the building of City Hall? And make that wall say Friends of City Hall, Friends of the City Hall Park, and make it the park wall. And put things on the wall, whether it's the pavers or plaques. We could make that whole wall and put some artwork on it and also put plaques and names and things all over it and engrave that. And use the back end of the wall instead of putting everything all over the park. I'd like us to look into that.
Vice Mayor.
Seen the pictures of the City Hall Park, but I don't know the essence and the feel of the park yet, right? Because I think you have to I think it's going to be amazing, like for seeing the final structure and now just seeing the space it's going to be in. I feel differently than I did 6 months ago when I didn't see that space. So I'm kind of more of a wait and see on this. I want to do it, but I don't know what the right thing is going to be for this space. Right? Is it going to be on the back wall, whatever wall that is? I tend to think that that's better than a brick paver, that has to be replaced because it, go see Main Street, right? And that's so we don't need that. But then you go look at the courthouse in the front. There's the engravings of all the people who were from World War I and that kind of thing from that's still there. So I like the wall idea. I also think about Tinkerbell Park. Take my daughters and my wife and her 2 sisters' little hand-drawn names are in one of those bricks. Don't know how long that'll be there, but they were a part of it. So I love this idea of being a part of it. But this is a really special place, and I'm hesitant to just... I feel like it's almost too soon for me to even think about what might be appropriate or the best thing to do until we see more of it. I don't know that that's not there on the day it's opened. Maybe it'll be better in 6 months when we start seeing some of the infrastructure come in and we get to start see how it formalizes. But
trees get bigger and everything like that.
Yeah, so in the park benches, I just don't know. I think that's how I feel. Is I don't know what's going to be. But I know we got one shot at it, or else it's there for 15 years. And once we start taking people's money, it's permanent, or not permanent, but what our rules are. But I think I have a sense of hesitation until I really get a feel for the park. But I want to do something because it's really cool to take your kids back and see where they were involved or gave and were a friend of Tinkerbell Park. Just don't know how that is.
Alderman Caesar.
We have budget for this park, right?
Yeah.
Right, we're not doing this to try to buy the last couple of bricks. I think that being said, we appreciate the work that Friends does with us, and I think, Patrick, you bring up some good points here. I don't want this to feel like it's a NASCAR park, if that makes sense, and I don't mean to disrespect others who put signs on things, but this is the jewel in the crown of our city. I want people to be a part of it because it's very real what you're talking about, Tori. People, whether they want their name on it or not, they want to be a part of this. And I think we've got something pretty special here, and we got to be intentional about it. I think there's some good options out there, but it may need a little bit of time to cook before we can say, let's go ahead and do this before we've seen it and what it becomes when it's real.
And if you don't mind, if I could clarify, we're not asking to do naming rights. Friends is not. We're just open. The bench program exists, and if Lisa, I defer to her for that discussion. And the fountain did come up. If we were to fund that, would another amenity get to be added later? Who knows? That's a city discussion. But we would be open to that, and we would be happy. But we share the vision. It should not be named all over. I mean, it's going to be special. So I totally agree with everything you're saying. But we would be open to participate, and we'd be happy to. We actually got our board very excited about the fountain opportunity.
Okay, we got one more item we need to go to is discussion of the Carruthers sidewalk. Alderman Potts.
All right, thank you, sir. I'm also going to invite Eric to also be part of this conversation, as well as Paul, and may also bring up Lisa as well. And again, I don't want to shortchange this in time. I know that our other meeting's scheduled to start at 7, but I do think it's necessary that we dedicate this time. I'm bringing this to the board right now because I've had a number of safety concerns that are brought to me by residents that are along Carruthers Boulevard, not just Ladd Park, but multiple HOAs. And in reviewing those safety concerns, it really opened my eyes to say, in 18 to 24 months from now, we're going to open up the Pearl Park. And when we do, we're going to see an influx of young people wanting to walk, ride, their parents taking strollers, taking wagons, whatever it might be, from, and we'll use Ladd Park as the example right now, all the way up to go to Pearl Park. And it's really going to be activated. So what I wanted to do, I know I can't see Lisa from here, but as we spoke earlier, I had some numbers here, just rough numbers. Currently, there's 1,247 homes that are in Ladd Park. Doing a quick population review, that's over 4,000 people. That's over approximately 2,500 adults and right at 1,500 kids. So when you take just a small percentage, and maybe Lisa, you can help to speak to this, because from a national parks perspective, when you hear there's 4,000 people in an area and you're going to open up a park, how many people you can anticipate going to that park. So if you could just quickly speak to that for us for a second.
Sure. With actually what is being planned is you'll have Robertson Lake come on board first, and then you will have the Pearl is second right behind it. And the anticipation of when you're talking about athletics, we're going to at least put over 1,000 just in athletics, from cheerleaders and football players and coaches and all of those people every day of the week, because you'll have something that's taking place even from lacrosse and other athletics. You're going to see an influx immediately of, when people come to watch, of around 3,000 people. We have that at Jim Warren Park, when we have baseball and you have football taking place at the same time. We have an influx that the county, and we've done the numbers of, you'll have throughout an entire day, you have about 7,000 people. We're going to have this in this community because you're going to have, it's an open space. You're going to have LEG's Dream World. You're going to have trails. You're going to have all of those things that we're hoping for. But you're going to have people, and they're going to come. And having the safe route, as we talked about e-bikes, but we've also talked about walking and not being able to cross in the right manner, being able to go from Ladd Park, Water's Edge, Echelon, all of these homes, including Cannonwood and Falcon Creek, anything that's from Carruthers down, you're going to have people, and this becomes their neighborhood park, and it's an amazing amenity that we're going to have.
Yeah, so again, what you're seeing on the screen right now is the map, and on the bottom left-hand corner, you can see where Long Lane is. If you go up just 2 spots, you'll see that says Parkworth Drive, and that's where Paul and I and Lisa and Eric have all met and said, okay, well, if we're going to put this in, we need to do it the right way and have sidewalk connectivity that actually takes it north all the way up to the very top of where that map is. There's a canoe launch right there next to the river. That's where the bridge is, and that's where there is no sidewalk. On the other side of the bridge is where you see the sidewalk. So right now, these residents that don't have Pearl Park yet or Robinson Lake, they are right now just going and walking and biking and enjoying the area. And they're just doing it because they want to. Soon, in the next 18 to 24 months, they're going to have a greater purpose to do everything that Lisa just described. So that's why I'm bringing this to us right now. This is a huge safety concern that it should have already been put in place with the sidewalk. It's not there, and we have a great park that's going to open. So I asked Paul to speak a little bit about some of the options that are available based on we already have the right-of-way and the Ladd Park, which is the majority of the area right there, has already given their 100% of their support as well. So Paul, turn it to you for a minute.
Okay, so Alderman Potts did a great job of explaining that and introducing it. What we were tasked to do is come up with 4 different options. These were also presented during the CIP process, ultimately wasn't selected. So that tells me it's at least 10 years out where we come in here and try to widen it to the 4 lanes with a multi-use trail and a sidewalk. And so we developed what we consider to be one permanent option and about 3 temporary options. But when I say temporary, it's 10 plus years out because it's not prioritized in your capital plan. So the option 1 is the permanent solution, which is essentially building the additional northbound lane from Parkworth Drive north all the way to the bridge. We would essentially just build that at full depth, and that would give you a 12-foot shoulder, which we could simply stripe. You could put delineators. Alderman Potts pointed out that they don't look the greatest. You don't necessarily even need the delineators, but you could build that out at full depth, and none of that would be thrown away. It would be 90% reused we will, when the board decides to prioritize and widen the section of Carruthers Parkway. Unfortunately, that's the most expensive option. That total cost is about $2.1 million. So that's a big capital expense. But again, the majority of that does not get thrown away as a permanent improvement. So given the time frame of 10 plus years, we developed option 2 and 3, which also goes from Parkworth Drive all the way to the Carruthers Bridge. One as an 8-foot wide paved pedestrian trail system. We would do that to bare minimum standards, which what that means to you is it would look good for 10 to 15 years before we really needed to do maintenance. So basically base stone in a small asphalt section that would look good for 10 to 15 years. Option 3 was a concrete sidewalk. Basically a 5-foot sidewalk. Again, 100% of that gets removed. And so the asphalt trail system we estimated to be around $800,000. The sidewalk we estimated to be about $1.3 million. The fourth option comes possibly with repercussions, is really only extending it to Truman Road. I think if you did that, you would have a good chunk of the subdivision upset that it didn't get extended to the other entrances. I think it's an option. They can go through their subdivision to get to it. It is the least expensive option at around $550,000. So 3 options developed there for you to consider. It's a big project. It's a big expense. Happy to answer any questions.
And Paul, before we move forward, if I could, and then I want to ask Eric a quick question, just to speed this process along and then open it up for comment and question. Recognizing that we're talking about 4,000 residents within one specific core area, is this the largest potential sidewalk project to service an area that we've done in recent history?
To my knowledge, yes. A lot of our sidewalk gap projects that we did not serve this population, and I think Fieldstone Farms was the biggest one that we did that put sidewalks on those arterial roads there. Great project, but there's a lot of houses in Ladd Park.
So this, again, servicing over 1,200. And so, Eric and I have been talking about this for several months and several quarters, actually, and trying to find the right time and when we might be able to do it. So as far as the funding goes, I know that's going to be a question everybody's going to ask. Could you speak to that?
Yeah, you do have some capacity in your CIP that was unprogrammed. In fact, we put some dollars in there for what we called opportunities. There are also a couple projects that we basically put in the most expensive option on, and there's some high likelihood that you will opt for some less expensive options. So that frees some capacity. You have the ability to do, especially the options 2 through 4. We could make those happen within the capacity and the model that you have. We wanted to have some capacity, and we have it available. And like I said, there are some forthcoming decisions, some of which you've already made, that do free up some capacity because we carried the most expensive option we could on several projects, and those will get refined. So financially, this could be accommodated within the existing CIP model.
Okay. And so, just for everybody's purpose, just in the past 24 hours since Monday morning, I sent out an email Sunday night just saying, hey, this is going to be up for discussion. We'd love to see some feedback. Each of you have received approximately 50 emails in roughly 24 hours. And then I've also provided everybody a petition that's been signed that has approximately 100 signatures on it as well. All of these are all focused on safety. That's the push here. And so I want to make sure that we have good open discussion here. We've also, I spoke with Tori as well. We've got the support of Friends of Franklin Park. I've also reached out to the state of Tennessee regarding the Blue Ways connection at the canoe launch as well, and they're going to be reviewing that regarding the sidewalk connectivity as well. So there are several pieces that are going into this, and as you can see from public input, this is extremely important. So, Mr. Mayor, I'll turn it back to you, sir.
What other projects do we have sidewalk? What other projects do we have for sidewalks?
Oh, you've got some projects in the existing, already approved in the CIP.
Is Boyd Mill?
Boyd Mill, you've got the Eddie Lane. They've got those specific ones identified. We do sidewalk gap funding on an annual basis where we just look at opportunities. This is a little above that typical threshold. That's kind of why we're identifying it here. From looking at the specific unique circumstance around opening the Pearl, that kind of created a little bit of a sense of urgency about at least having the discussion with you while the opportunity was there to do it, to lead into the opening of that great new park facility. So, but yeah, you have some things there. You have some things you do on an ongoing basis. This sort of is a tweener between the larger CIPs and the things we do on a smaller annual basis to help fill gaps.
Look, I sit there on item 6 and said, put the sidewalk in. And this is similar. It's a sidewalk we're putting in that at some point in time, we're probably going to take out. But I think that this is a wonderful project myself, but I also think there's some others too that we need to make sure that we're not letting them slip behind or get behind in some form or fashion. But no, that needs to be done. There's that many people out there, and at one time, Carruthers wasn't even scheduled to be built at one time.
Correct.
Right.
So yes, I think we need to go ahead and look at that. And I'm not going to sit here and try to figure out which one of the options that we need to do. Whichever one you want to do, you can look at that and see how you want to handle that. But yes, I'll support going ahead and doing the Carruthers sidewalk projects.
Alderman Brown.
I could certainly support option number 2. That seems to make the most sense to me. The only thing I would say, I would definitely agree with Alderman Barnhill. We've been talking about Eddie Lane for a long time. We've been talking about some of these other ones for a long time. I get the safety concerns, but leapfrogging some of these ones, these neighbors have been really concerned as well. I just would hate to see us install a sidewalk ahead of some other ones that need some attention as well. So,
Vice Mayor, quickly.
I'm the only other one that voted for this in the capital improvement ranking. You and me, Potts. But I do think the option 2, I agree. I don't want it to cause others to be delayed, while option 2 it's already there. It sounds pretty straightforward. I hesitate to say this, but it's throwaway, and we're doing it because, I would like, I don't know if there's any kind of partnership opportunity with the HOA on this. That's kind of an odd situation, but we're spending a lot of money on stuff that we know we're going to throw away, and we already voted through an extensive process on the capital improvement project list. And while if we took everybody's concern one at a time throughout the 10-year period, we would have this same kind of discussion with really, really valid residents concerned, and they get to be heard in their own silo, which is one reason why we do this in a capital investment program. so that those residents have the opportunity to engage, and we get to think about these in light of everything else. So I spoke up during the CIP for this with my vote, but I do think that, yeah, we just talked about this 6 months ago, but I would support option 2 if it came up.
Alderman Caesar.
I appreciate Alderman Potts for bringing this up. I hope in his vigor in getting us emails from residents who are interested, that he also communicated that if this goes forward, it's not happening tomorrow. Right? This is a process. It will take time. I think we need to do it. I don't want to see it jumping ahead of other intentional plan projects. I'd love to see it happen, and maybe this is possible, maybe it's not. I'd love to hear Paul and Eric provide a little bit of a projected timeline for us getting one of these together so that we can set that expectation with the folks, the 60 or 70 or 80 that emailed me from Monday till tonight. And I've responded to all of you, and I appreciate hearing from you. I just want to make sure that you're not sitting at home expecting us to start digging tomorrow. And so if we were to move forward with one of these at some point, what is our realistic timeline?
So you have the right of way. It's been pre-graded, to my knowledge, for the full future build out. I believe we can turn this over to the street department and do it fairly quickly. But before I give you a date, let me sit down with Derek and Jerry and come up with a realistic expectation of what they can do and where this falls within their priority. We'd more than likely use an annual contractor to do it. But it should be very straightforward and quick.
And my only other comment, I was not on the board when Ladd Park came into the city. Was there any discussion with Ladd Park about this being some of the impact fees associated with that development? Is there money sitting somewhere that we could reach into for this?
No. I mean, looking back on it, we talk about unintended consequences is I would have built the 2 lanes like we did on the north side, so we would have had a trail. That didn't happen. Learned my lesson from that. I will say when we build the trail, and I talked to Alderman Potts about this, if we build the trail on the east side, you will have the next thing to one are all the crossings of a 40-mile-per-hour roadway. So we would probably incorporate that up front. I would stress those are going to be temporary too. When we do the 4-lane widening, those would have to go away. But people will want to, on the east side or west side, be able to get to it as well. So,
in this case, the temporary is 10 to 15 years realistically.
Correct.
So it's just trying to accept a reality of, can you make it better for a pretty extended period of time? Especially knowing that the park is going to create a pretty strong attraction, and we want to serve it and support it well too.
Okay, we've got an option here. We'll continue on and just start the next meeting, or we'll take a 10-minute break.
We'll bring option 2
10-minute
back.
break.